You are in for a treat today, as my guest is an international authority on authentic leadership and self-awareness. You will be blown away by her experiences, her inspiring story of strength, and by her wisdom. Norma Hollis has researched human nature for over 30 years while consulting at Fortune 500 companies, directing large nonprofits, coaching C-suite executives, and writing programs for human development. She uses these skills to help people bring out the best in themselves so that they can create a more joyful and meaningful life, both personally and professionally. She also certifies and licenses people to deliver this program, as well as use it as a self-coaching tool. Norma is one of 16 women selected to represent the United States on a 5-week visit to China to teach her authenticity program to university students. Norma is so committed to helping people know themselves because she uses this as the foundation for finding personal peace and making a more powerful impact in the world. Welcome to the Succeed Against the Odds podcast. My name is Francesca Anastasi, also known as Sabea. I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I'm your host and mentor. And each week we bring you an inspiring person, an expert, or message, and some behind the scenes to help you ignite and unleash your potential. Thanks so much for listening. All the way from Los Angeles, my guest is Norma Hollis. Welcome, Norma.
Thank you, Francesca. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
I am so intrigued to have you here on my show because I saw the description of what you do. You are an authenticity consultant. Can you please share with us what that means?
Well, yes, I work with individuals and organizations. I believe that every individual was born with a certain set of gifts and talents. That is what they're supposed to be using and doing in their life. But that society moves us in directions oftentimes away from what is authentically who we are. So I help people get readjusted and put them back on the path of living the life that's authentic for them. And the same thing with organizations. And when organizations, especially with leaders and authentic leadership, I help the leaders become more aware of who they are and become more authentic so they can lead more effectively.
Now, you've been doing this for a while?
I've been doing it for a while. You know, my doing it is in two parts, because part one was the longest part, which was writing the program, which was an experience of a 30-year journey of living my own life and writing about it and not understanding that in dissecting me, I dissected others. And then when I figured it out, the second part is, well, what do you do with it now that you've done this? So I'm on part two now, which is very exciting.
So what led you to become an authenticity consultant?
Yes, well, I didn't start off saying I'm going to be an authenticity expert. That was not the objective. I was 28, and I had realized that I had done everything my parents had said to do to have a successful life. I had the husband, the cars, the house, the job, you know, all the things that I was told were important. And I was absolutely miserable. And I didn't know what to do with my life because I didn't know who I was, because I was raised in the image of who my parents thought I should be. So I then decided to go on a quest to know me. And I didn't know it would take me 30 years of dissecting myself. And so it was just a journey to learn who I am. And then in the process, finding that I had created something that not only relates to me, but to other people. Because I'm a writer, so all the time I was discovering myself, I was also writing about it and writing different stories. And that led me to just do things like make a grid and create an assessment and just do a number of things. I got myself into the professional speaking industry. I owned a speakers bureau for a number of years. And so with that foundation, and then my degrees are early childhood, which is personal development and how people grow up and who they become. So it was a natural mix to start speaking about it once I understood what it was. And then to coach and to teach. That's what a lot of speakers are, coaches. And I've been a coach all my life. I've been coaching everybody that I meet, whether they asked or not, for a long time before I realized you don't want to do it quite that way. But yeah.
I think there's so much value in what you're doing in more ways than one. Just the fact that, you know, what you said earlier, that as you were writing the program, you realized that this was not just for you, but it could help other people. And I think it brings home that we're really not alone. We may feel like we're going through some big challenges that nobody else can understand, but you're saying it's not true. We're not alone, really. A lot of people go through challenges. And on that specific topic, before we started this interview, you did mention that you've had to succeed against some odds. Are you willing to share some of that?
Oh, I'll share a few. One is I had ear infections for 55 straight years, every single year, that I treated with mostly with antibiotics. I took antibiotics for 40 years straight, and that obviously wreaked havoc on my body. I've had a total of 11 surgeries. The women in my family die of digestive cancer, so I was eating the anti-cancer diet, and little did I know that when I was eating for anti-cancer, it was giving me kidney stones. So I've had 3 kidney stone surgeries. And so dealing with all of that and the lack of energy that came from the Candida albicans that wrecked my body after the antibiotics. And then my most difficult challenge was my husband's murder 3 years ago. That obviously was very challenging. They've never even found anyone, arrested anyone regarding it. So, you know, all of these things, when things happen to you one-on-one, you know, you just deal with it the best way you can. And when they happen 2-on-2 and 3-on-3 and just continue, you just keep going. My motivation in all of this has just been understanding that I felt I came here for a purpose, and continuing on the journey, and looking at every struggle that I've had and learning from the lessons of the struggle and growing from the lessons. And that's what's made the difference for me.
First of all, I'm so sorry about your husband's passing and how it happened, all the other challenges. How does one, I can't even begin to imagine what that experience would have been like. And I think most people can't identify with that. The way you're talking now is, you're an unbelievable pillar of strength. And it sounds to me like you've chosen something that I would say there's always the opportunity and the challenge, but that's quite the challenge. Did you go through a phase where it was like there had to be some sort of transition? Were you immediately like super strong, or was there a time of grieving? How did you go through that process?
Well, you know, I've always been pretty connected, pretty grounded to understanding that the picture is bigger than me. The world is bigger than me. And where do I fit in the world? And having had the years of self-exploration and knowing myself, I relied on my strengths and looked for my friends who understood my weaknesses as a way to be support for me. And they very much were. I always kept my sights on my great passion for making a difference in the world and my great passion for helping other people. And I think I turned everything into that. And I think also that I learned a lot of this strength at a very young age, because the other thing I didn't mention, that the reason I had the ear infections for 55 straight years started when I was 8 years old, when I had the first hole in my eardrum. I still have a hole in my eardrum. I've had it all my life. And they treated it, it was an infection that came from the hole in my eardrum. And they treated it with penicillin and other things. And then those always gave me infection. I mean, they give the highs and the allergies. And the only way they could stop the infection was to put a substance inside of my ear, which felt like acid on the inside of my head. And then I had to go back and have that done on a regular basis. And that was followed by another year of just earaches that nobody could stop. They just wouldn't stop. They just were just horrible. And so that's where my strength came from, being 8 and 9 years old and having that level of pain and having to deal with it and just having to go forward and not having people around me to really help me figure out how to live life with that pain and where to put that pain in my brain, where to put it in my emotions and not let it drive and be a part of my life as long as it has been. So that's the foundation of my strength. And then I just built on that. So I learned how to deal with pain at a very early age.
You also mentioned that you're, in order to fight cancer from happening to you because it runs in the family, you went on an anti-cancer diet, which ended up causing you kidney stones. May I ask, what was it that you were eating that was causing the kidney stones? As I'm sure our listeners are probably wondering, what were you eating?
Well, let me just clarify that by saying that I had a predisposition for it, because by taking the antibiotics for so many years, it destroyed. When you take antibiotics, they kill the good and the bad bacteria, and you have to replace the good bacteria, which I did not know and did not do. And as a result, the cilia that are in our intestines that move things through your intestines, mine, I don't have them. So I had to be careful what I eat. And as a result, the oxalates, I have calcium oxalate kidney stones. There are 3 different types of kidney stones, and that's the type that I have. And so the foods that I eat, doesn't reflect everybody. So don't panic, people, when I tell you this, okay? That's why I'm saying this, and I'm prefacing it with it, okay? Because my body doesn't move the oxalates, which are normally in certain foods. My body will not move them out of my system. So if I'm not careful, they bond with the calcium, and that causes the stone. So those foods that I was eating to anti-cancer were your green leafy vegetables like spinach and kale, and then carrots and almonds and tofu and beets. I would travel a lot, and I would carry almonds and apples with me all the time. And the almonds, I didn't realize, were a contributor to kidney stones. You don't eat seeds or nuts. Pumpkin seeds are my safest thing, which I eat a lot of. So I avoid leafy green vegetables except for lettuce and bok choy. I avoid carrots and I avoid potatoes, because all of these things are things that are high in oxalate. It's not a group of foods. You kind of have to know what it is. And beets are very high in oxalate. So I avoid those foods. Chocolate, dark chocolate in general. So I do eat some of them occasionally, but I'll pick chocolate over spinach and rather eat bok choy. So it's just a matter of manipulating that. So everyone that doesn't say for everyone not to eat those foods, but people who are in my situation or have kidney stones. And also a low oxalate diet is also very helpful for children who have autism. So I say that for those that might relate to.
Well, thank you for clarifying that.
Yes. I'm not eating carrots anymore. No, that's not what I said. Okay.
Okay. So going back to what you said earlier, you talked about how growing up you did everything your parents told you to do, and you did what was expected of you, and then things changed for you. What made things change for you?
I wasn't happy. I didn't marry the right person. I got married because I was told I was supposed to be married. So I didn't get married because I found someone that I really had a good relationship with. I got married because I was told you're supposed to be married. So, and I became a teacher because my parents said, well, if your husband leaves you, if you teach, you're safe. You have a job. I taught for 1 month. I hated it. I like teaching, but not in the classroom. I like teaching as a speaker, teaching in a different manner, but not in the restrictions that are there in the classroom. I'm a little more out of the box than a traditional, school classroom. So I had to find my way to become a speaker to come out of the classroom. The issue of my parents' values, my parents, I love them dearly. They're both gone, but my mother particularly was very much into Cadillacs and mink coats and diamond rings and things of that nature that are not really in my value system. So one of the things that I do now is I work a lot with people who are in transition, and especially those who are 16 to 30. That's one of the groups. I have 3 groups I work with. That's one. And that's because, like you mentioned earlier about we're all the same, I just spent 2 months in China working with college students, teaching them and facilitating my authenticity process. And what was so interesting to me is that as I did one-on-one with some of these students, I heard the same thing that I just said, except rather than teacher, their parents told them to go into accounting or statistics or finance. And I'm meeting them and they're saying, I hate this. What am I supposed to do? I'm a junior or a senior about to graduate with this degree in an area that I don't care for. So that's, again, why my authenticity, help people to put people on their authentic path in life, whether it's their early time, whether they're transitioning and changing jobs, or whether they're retiring, but helping them find, where do they really belong in this world? Not where someone told them they should be, but where do they truly belong? That's an alignment with the gifts and talents and the values that are who they are.
So Norma, is there something that, if our listeners right now are wondering, well, how do I know if I'm not happy with where I'm at, or I'm not even sure if I'm happy or not, I just feel kind of blah. What can they do to kind of figure out, find their real self?
Yeah, there's two things I would recommend. The first thing has to do with connecting with your inner voice. Everyone was born with a voice that speaks, and that voice is inside of them and talks to them all the time. And some people don't recognize it, or they're not sure. And so what I tell people is to think about how you answer yourself when you ask yourself the question, what am I going to wear today? What am I going to eat? Or what time is it? And we ask ourselves those questions every day. And we get answers every time we ask them. So our inner voice answers us either through a feeling or a memory or something in our gut or a taste or whatever. So think about how you get the answer when you ask those questions. And that will enable you to begin to connect more deeply with your inner voice, because that's the foundation for authenticity. And the second thing I would recommend is for people to take my complimentary online assessment. It is called the Authentic Life Path Assessment, because it helps you assess whether or not you're on your authentic life path. And after you take the assessment, you get a series of informational pieces, some articles, and other things that will take you deeper into understanding just how authentic are you. And that will help you to do some self-examination if you're on your right path or not. And then we also offer some complimentary one-on-ones along with that if people are interested in having a conversation about their life path.
And the assessment is on your website. The link is in the show notes.
Yeah, so they can go to my regular website, normahollis.com, and there is a link there, or they can go directly to the assessment, and I think you have the link there, and that's authenticityassessment.com.
Wonderful. If a teenager comes to you and says, what's your best piece of wisdom you can give me? What would you say to them?
I would say to be their best self. I would do what, I was in Detroit last month visiting my grandson who just turned 16 a few weeks ago. And that's exactly what I did with him, because he's at that age where we're trying to figure out what the next step is. He's trying to figure it out. And my family is very traditional. I was out the box and they were all in the box. They didn't understand me and they don't understand him very well either. So what I did was immediately help him understand his values. What's really important to you? What are the values that are critical? Now, at 15, 16 teenagers, the values that you have are oftentimes the values that your parents had and told you you're supposed to believe. And so that next 10-year period that we go through is a period of adjusting those values. But I would tell a teenager to be aware of what's important to them, not what their parents said, but what's really in their heart, both in terms of what their values are and what they feel they want to do with their life, what really makes them happy. I have an assessment I give people that helps them find their 5 values and helps them identify their top 3 gifts. I believe that if people live their life in their top 3 gifts, they're much happier. So that's what I would tell them. Know themselves, gain your self-awareness, come to understand your values and your gifts, and then live your life in your values and your gifts.
Love it. And reversing the story, what if you had parents of teenagers in front of you and you have to give them advice? And these are parents that are trying to do what your parents did to you, imposing their expectations on their teens. Because
that's the question I love to hear, because that's who I really want to get to, is some of the parents of the teenagers or even younger children who feel it's their responsibility to direct their child's future, which I clearly understand. And what I like to tell parents is that your role is to help children understand who they are, so that they can make the right decisions in the future. So I love to ask parents, and I like to help parents recognize, and children too, that if you think about your parents or grandparents, not one of them could have imagined that you could hold something in your hand, a box in your hand, and talk to someone across the world. Who would have thought about that 100 years ago, 50 years ago? It was kind of, I'm saying, insane. But now everybody has a phone that they can call across the world in a drop beat. So how do you know what's going to happen 20 years from now when your children are in the workforce? I have an article that is free for people when they take my assessment and they click on transition when they finish. And it talks about the future of work. So I've researched this and the article explains it. And it tells you that more than half of the jobs that these young people will have available to them have not even been created yet. So how can you tell your child that this is the best thing for you when in many cases that type of job may not even exist? As a matter of fact, a huge number of jobs are going to disappear because of the emergence of artificial intelligence. So what's the child's best safety net? What's the best thing a parent can tell a child is be yourself. Connect with the gifts and talents you were born with and develop them. You know, gifts and talents are a funny thing. Some of them are very obvious and some are not. When people are like our basketball players, it's very obvious, musicians, it's very obvious very early in life that this may be their gift. And those that are successful practice it and that makes them successful. But some gifts like logical mathematical thinking doesn't emerge itself until later. But the thing is to watch your children before the age of 5, especially before the age of 7, and see what they gravitate to, and do your own research. See the article that I wrote, and click the link to take the assessment that tells you about some of the gifts and talents and what jobs are possible for them even in the future. Some future jobs, for example, are extinct species revivalist. Because we've gotten rid of some species and all of a sudden we need them because the whole ecological system's getting messed up. Space tourism guide, body parts manufacturer, body parts creator. It's stuff you wouldn't even think about. How this one, Android relationship counselor. So who would have thought? So raise your children by the gifts they have, then whatever the world has to offer 10, 20, 30 years from now, your child will be prepared to step into what's right for them.
Norma, I think this is the best advice I've ever heard anyone give parents.
Ooh, thank you.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so on board with you. I just love it. Love it. I love your wisdom. Wonderful. Now, you mentioned you're an author. You've written books. And where can we find your books? What are your books? Tell us about those.
I have 3 primary books. One is called 10 Steps to Authenticity. And that was the book I wrote 10 years ago. That's an overview of the entire system of being authentic that I've developed. It's actually a system of self-awareness, being your authentic self and finding your authentic path in life. And that one's on Amazon, 10 Steps to Authenticity. I also have a brand new book that just came out in June, and it's called Blueprint for Engagement. It's about authentic leadership. It's about using the principles as a leader. And it takes you deeper than the first one. It takes you deeper into the concepts of authenticity and the process and how to use it, and also gives you a number of case studies. And then the third book is actually the first one that I wrote, which is called The Process to Become a Professional Speaker. I used to own a speakers bureau, and I train speakers. I still train speakers and people to use their gifts and talents as a speaker professionally to earn income sharing their message. And that book is also on Amazon. And it will, and the book you can also find on my website. And that one is available too to help people who want to be professional speakers.
Now we know where to get them, both Amazon and on your website.
Yes.
3 books. That's amazing. Well, Norma, you're an incredible person. I love your wisdom, what you're doing, the difference you're making in the world. I really hope to connect with you in the future again. Is there anything before we go that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I just would like the audience to be more connected to their inner voice. Being authentic really begins in your inner voice and listening to the voice that guides you and leads you through your life. You know, we all talk about purpose a lot. We kind of throw that word around. But what really is purpose? Where does it come from? It comes from your inner voice. It comes from that gut feeling. It comes from something in terms of how your voice speaks to you that I mentioned earlier. So connect with that, because that will help you be more connected to who you are, give you far more peace in your life, and just put you on your authentic life path.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your wonderful comments. You got me smiling ear to ear. Thank you.
Oh, good. Well, you got me smiling too.
Oh, good.
I hope to meet you in person and give you a big hug one day.
Well, that would be wonderful. I look forward to that. Yes.
Well, we're not too far from each other. I mean, we're on the same side of the continent, so it can happen. You never know, right?
It can happen. That would be wonderful.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please pass it on, and it would mean so much to me if you would leave an honest review on iTunes. I'd really appreciate it. Till next time, embrace your magnificence.